From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Good show tonight. Always one of my favorite topics. We are talking about basically presidential news, what has been going on, and there's certainly plenty to discuss. We have with us John Bile, who is MTSU political science professor. Thank you so much for being here once again.
Delighted to be here.
And again, I mean, so much going on. We can go anywhere. I'll just start with what I've seen in the news today.
Okay.
I mean, yesterday, we'll talk about this, the fire and fury remark with North Korea. We'll talk about that. Today, FBI conducted a raid on Paul Manafort's home, the former campaign manager for Trump. That happened a few weeks ago, but it came out today.
That's right.
That's seemingly big news. And Trump and McConnell are kind of going back and forth. Mitch McConnell and Trump.
Sort of the blame game. You know, anytime legislation doesn't get adopted, you know, the president's perspective is, you know, you Republicans have been promising this for 7 years. You finally have both houses and you still can't get it done. From their perspective, I think Trump took a much more hands-off approach than his predecessor took for getting Obamacare through. And I think they, you know, deep down think that if he had worked a little harder or been a little keener, maybe it would have worked. But, you know, who knows?
Question, will they turn on each other? Trump is not afraid. I mean, Trump pushes right back. McConnell says maybe his expectations were a little unrealistic. Then Trump comes back with a tweet that is much harsher than that. Something about, well, you've been talking about this for 7 years. Why couldn't you do it? They weren't unrealistic expectations. The question keeps coming up, will the Republican Congress and Republican candidate or President Donald Trump, will they ever part ways?
You know what's actually interesting about the health care thing? Republicans actually got what was the final vote was 49.
Right.
They were only, I mean, they only lost 3 Republicans.
Right.
The Democrats were completely unified. And of course, it was almost the mirror image of what had happened during the Obama administration, where, you know, basically the Democrats pushed through a bill on their own because they could not get any Republican cooperation, and neither side wants to own the others. So, you know, I don't know. I suspect that what unites them is probably still at this point greater than what divides them, but a lot will depend issue by issue. You know, the kind of division that you would get on tax issues, for example, may be very different. You certainly might have some conservative Democrats who would say, you know, we need to do something about corporate tax rates, or you know, we need to get rid of this particular deduction, or we agree that, you know, this is a particularly good mechanism to use. So I think it's going to be pretty much, you know, we've never had in the United States the kind of, you know, parliamentary democracies. They sort of rise or fall on, you know, whether the prime minister can get his bills through. We've never had that system in the United States. So I think it's really, you know, not unlike what would happen in another, you know, even if Trump weren't president, I'm not sure that you would have had a president who would be any more successful on this issue.
It's tough right now.
Absolutely.
And what I like to turn to you and ask often is, you know, how does this compare to history? Because it feels like what we're seeing is just really rough over and over.
Well,
but you know, so how does it compare? I mean, what I hear people saying is, well, Ronald Reagan said it was okay to compromise and reach across the aisle.
Yes.
Now there's none of that.
There's much less bipartisanship than there was 20, 30 years ago. And you know, sort of the irony of this is, during that time, 30 or 40 years ago, particularly in the political science literature, people were saying we need more responsible political parties. They need, you know, if you vote for a Democrat, you need to know you're voting for a liberal, and vice versa if you vote for a Republican. And now we have it, and people are saying, I'm not sure that's exactly what we wanted either. So, you know, we've always had a division of powers. It's not been infrequent that we've had a president of one party and a Congress of the other. What's a little unusual right now is that even having both houses of Congress, the presidents and presidency, and about half and half on the court, Republicans still haven't been able to get through sort of their signature programs.
What do you think that means for Republicans in the midterm elections?
Well, almost always midterm elections, the president's party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, loses. Now, the one thing though to be really careful about here, particularly if you have intervening foreign circumstances, this Korean thing, I don't know, how it's going to go, but there's often a rally around the flag effect. If the country perceives as a whole, we could talk, and I think a lot of people think maybe Trump overreacted a bit yesterday, but still, we make a distinction between our people overreacting and somebody in Korea who's not only overreacting, but he's a demagogue. He's not responsible to anybody. We all sort of fear him, and ultimately you're going to rally around our country on an issue like that. So, one just never knows.
You don't know about those, the midterm elections. Then the other thing that came out today, the FBI conducting this raid on Manafort's home.
Yeah, it's sort of shocking, and what would be really shocking were if it had occurred, if Hillary Clinton had been elected president, and it had occurred on her watch. Imagine what people would think about, is this taking partisanship to a new level? Is she just trying to harass somebody who, led the other campaign? But, I think of all the people being investigated right now, Manafort looks to me to be the most vulnerable. Man, there seems to be more connection between him and Russia and Ukraine than there do to the others, but that's from a 20-30,000 view out, who doesn't know any of the particulars going on other than, this is pretty shocking. What's shocking is there was so much apparent distrust. This is a person who headed a major political party campaign. You would think that you would just issue a subpoena and say, give me these documents. But the fact that they're knocking on his door at 5 or 6 in the morning suggests that there is a fear that if he gets warning, he's going to destroy something.
And you have to, present probable cause to a judge to get a search warrant.
Absolutely.
They don't just hand those things out.
No, they don't.
Probable cause that a crime has been committed. There has to be something there.
Yes.
And so it shows the investigation is moving.
It certainly appears to. I found it, not much shocks me anymore, but the thought of doing this in the early morning hours was, and it also, we don't know I don't know what coordination there is between special counsel and what's happening in these congressional investigations, which really have been, compared to Watergate, and it's a little bit early to make too many comparisons here, but, so many of the hearings in Watergate were public affairs, and most of what's happened before Congress to this point has been behind closed doors. So it's really hard to know, what evidence is out there, and is it Trump himself, or, is it, just somebody who happened to be in his campaign.
And so this raid happened July 26th, I think. So
yeah, the surprising thing is that, they kept it a secret for, 2 weeks? That's a record in Washington.
Trump probably, it wouldn't be surprising if Trump knew about it. If
I would
Manafort
suspect
had told Trump or whatever.
I would suspect that he would.
And that is the time he was tweeting about how upset he was with Jeff Sessions. And if you look at those tweets and where he was there, you see maybe some of that was brought on by this raid.
Well, the latest is that he's supposed to have exchanged somewhat positive messages with the special counsel.
Right.
That suggests that something may be going on beyond what we know.
What do you think about just this investigation in general? Again, how unusual is this? Put it in perspective for all of us, if you can. And there are people. Just again, how divided we are. There are people who think this is a nonsense investigation, I guess, and there are people who think it's absolutely necessary, and yet nobody knows the facts. And so I don't understand when people say this is nonsense. Well,
how do we know? Right?
How do we know? And then people who say it's absolutely necessary and should. How do we know?
What I think, to me, is fairly clear is that Russia intervened in our election. And it's not unique to us. They tried to do it in France. They've done it in Ukraine. They've done it elsewhere. I think part of what's happened is that Trump has regarded any investigation as a kind of, you don't accept my election as legitimate. I certainly accept. I mean, I don't think he won the popular vote as he claimed, but he clearly won the Electoral College, and that's how presidents are elected. I think if the president could put aside, if he could just accept, we are concerned about Russian intervention in our election, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again, I think he might rest a little bit easier. Unless he does, in fact, have something to hide. And at this point, it seems difficult to believe that the American president would collaborate with a foreign government, to win an election. But who knows? I mean, strange things have happened. What's interesting is it does sort of take us back to the Cold War days, where the worst thing you could say about somebody. I remember the famous line when Richard Nixon was running for the Senate against a somewhat liberal woman whose name is escaping me right now, and he claimed that she was pink right down to the color of her underwear. And this was, it was chauvinist. It was sort of a shocking kind of thing, but it was, any allegation that you could make that your enemy was somehow tied to socialism or communism was just, thought to be, the end.
That's funny. Yeah. Now, all right, so there's obviously they're concerned about, they seem concerned about the investigation. The investigation, you're saying, well, if there was no collusion with Russia, which seems kind of hard to wrap your head around, there's no worry. But I think they're also concerned this investigation, once it gets started, can go anywhere. Well, and we saw with Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
It was Whitewater, and then all of a sudden it's about Monica Lewinsky,
yes.
and that's nowhere near Whitewater. So they're worried, I think, about that.
No, I mean, I think that is a legitimate concern. And what's interesting is Ken Starr did an editorial within the last week or two sort of warning against prosecutors going too far, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, he's finally seen the light.
Wow. I didn't see it. I would love to read that.
Well, it was an editor, I believe, in the Washington Post, possibly the Times, but one or the other.
All right, we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, there is the number. Call in. Richard, hold on. We'll take your call. Others, if you want to call in, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.